In a post-apocalyptic world of heavy metal fantasy, the only thing able to save humans from orcs, lizardmen, and other monsters is something even more evil. Sealed within a 14-year-old boy named Lucian is the chaotic wizard Dark Schneider, and he can only be released with a kiss from a virgin. Starting with the positives, Bastard is hilarious. I mean, the concept of just a kid that has an evil sorcerer in him and the only way to get him out is with a kiss of a virgin is just so out there. And when Dark Schneider is revealed, once he shows up, he is easily the star of the show. He's hilarious. He doesn't give a fuck. All he wants to do is have sex with beautiful women and take over the world. He's not necessarily your typical good guy, but I think that's what makes him so unique, is that he just doesn't give a fuck, and he just wants to do it just because it pleases him, and no one's gonna say no otherwise because he'll kill you. Besides Dark Schneider, I actually walked away from the show enjoying a few of the characters. I enjoyed Yoko and her bubbly personality, as well as just being a total tsundere to everyone else, and I also really liked Gara. Gara in the show, not only does he look like Guts, and he's voiced by Steven Bloom, which is 2 pluses in my book, but they actually give you some decent backstory into his character, and gives you a bit more understanding as to why he's doing what he's doing. And I thought he played off very well as Dark Schneider's rival, and the two had really interesting scenes and both had good dialogue, and I really liked the two characters. I thought their dynamic was really well done. One of my favorite things about Bastard 1992 is the dub. You got some really good voice actors in here. You got Steve Bloom, you got Wendy Lee, and Darren Norris. And if Darren Norris is a name that rings some bells, let me show you a clip and let me ask you who he sounds like.
What happened to Luce? What have you done with him?
I am Luce, but the spell has transformed me. Now I am Dark Schneider, the most powerful wizard in the world.
We know what I think!
Who cares what you think? You're a girl now.
That's right, he's Cosmo from Fairly Odd Parents. And when I went to the show, I already knew of that fact, but just hearing Dark Schneider say all this weird ass shit as Darren Norris just made me think of like Cosmo saying all this stuff, and it just made the dub even that much better, because like this show is ridiculous and the dub kind of matches how ridiculous the show can be, and I imagine that they were having a good time because it was just fun all around. Now moving on to some mixed aspects I have with this show. While the art style for the most part is pretty good, they do kind of change up the art style around the halfway point, and it just made some characters look a little weird. And the animation, while pretty good, it isn't great. Like I said, with the art style, it does kind of change towards the second half, and it's not great. I mean, yeah, there's some really cool looking moments, but for the most part, the animation's not the greatest thing ever. Another thing I'm kind of mixed on is its music. While it does fit the dark fantasy tone that the show is going for, when you have heavy metal as part of your concept, I expect some heavy fucking metal. And unfortunately, it just doesn't have it in this show, and I think it could have used some. The music's not bad, it does fit the tone, but I just wish that maybe there was some heavy metal into it to make it even more epic and badass. Now moving over to the negatives, I wasn't a fan of the show's second half. It kind of dips its tone and stops being over-the-top ridiculous by introducing another love interest, and while she's a cool character for the most part, I didn't really find her that interesting, and that's probably due to the fact that this is only 6 episodes, where if they had more, maybe they could have gone more deeper into some of the characters and given a little bit more development, but unfortunately they didn't have that. Now, luckily there is a new adaptation on Netflix that I will be checking out, but for this one, it didn't have that luxury. Now, this was planned to be 8 episodes long, but for whatever reason, they decided to cut the last 2 episodes, maybe just because of budget reasons. I'm not sure why, but it could have helped just because the show somewhat ends on a cliffhanger, there is somewhat of a conclusion. They do defeat a big bad, but then in the last like minute and a half, there is another big bad that is revealed, and it seems like there's some evil plans, and you never get it. Now, luckily, as I said, there is another adaptation on Netflix that is probably going to be more deeper and maybe even be more faithful to the manga, but for this one, it just didn't cut it. Now, I must admit, I never read any of the manga. I don't even think the manga is out here in America for me to even read, so I can't compare to how well of an adaptation this was, but I'm going to assume that this was not a great adaptation just because some characters don't really get enough backstory and some characters are not really that interesting, like the main villain Abigail. And yes, he is named Abigail and he looks like Dracula. Maybe he's cooler in the manga, but in the anime I didn't really connect with him. Overall, Bastard 1992 was pretty good for the most part. It has its shortcomings, and it's only 6 episodes, so not a lot of things are going to be well developed or well told, but thankfully this does have a second chance with that Netflix show that I will be checking out, and hopefully that does it better. Big thanks to Miasma Senpai, Warp8, and Ash the Man for supporting me on Patreon. You guys are awesome.